Most people think they understand what America's bloodiest day really means. They imagine chaotic battlefields, smoke, and soldiers falling in the distance. But that image is wrong, because the truth of Antietam isn't distant at all. It's intimate, it's personal, and it's far more horrific than the history books ever showed you. In just 12 hours, across a battlefield barely 3 miles wide, 23,000 Americans were killed, wounded, or went missing, more than the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, and the Mexican-American War combined. Imagine the screams rising from the cornfield as volleys cut through 6-foot stalks like a steel harvest. Imagine the sunken road filling, not with soldiers, but with bodies stacked so deep a man could walk across without touching dirt. This wasn't simply a battle. It was the moment America's soul was ripped open. So the question is now, how did a quiet Maryland farm turn into the deadliest 12 hours in U.S. history, and why have we softened the truth ever since? The stage is set along Antietam Creek, near the small town of Sharpsburg. Confederate General Robert E. Lee has taken a daring gamble, leading his army of Northern Virginia deep into Union territory. His goals are ambitious: threaten Washington, force the Union Army into a decisive battle, and perhaps, with a victory, win recognition from Britain or France, tipping the war in the Confederacy's favor. But Lee's forces are divided, spread thin across Maryland in a risky maneuver that leaves him dangerously exposed. Union General George McClellan, cautious by nature, yet emboldened by an extraordinary stroke of luck, has stumbled upon Lee's battle plans, wrapped around 3 cigars left behind by a careless Confederate officer. McClellan now knows precisely where Lee's scattered divisions are positioned, and he's moving to strike. As dawn breaks, Lee has gathered about 38,000 men along a defensive line stretching nearly 4 miles. They're outnumbered almost 2 to 1. Union General McClellan commands roughly 75,000 troops, the largest army ever assembled on the North American continent. He holds every advantage: superior numbers, detailed knowledge of enemy positions, and high ground for his artillery. But McClellan, ever the perfectionist and perpetually hesitant, will squander those advantages with his cautious, piecemeal assaults, turning what could have been a decisive Union triumph into a bloody stalemate. The battlefield in those early hours looks deceptively calm. Tall cornfields ripple in the breeze. A small white church belonging to the German Baptist Brethren, known as the Dunkers, sits quietly on a rise. A worn, sunken road cuts through farmland, and a simple stone bridge spans Antietam Creek on the southern edge. Before the day is done, these peaceful landmarks will bear names that echo through history: the cornfield, the Dunker Church, Bloody Lane, and Burnside's Bridge, places forever synonymous with slaughter. The soldiers of both sides are exhausted and hungry. Many are sick. Lee's Confederates have marched hard, their uniforms tattered, many without shoes. Yet they are veterans, toughened by years of war and led by officers who've proven their courage time and again. The Union troops are better supplied and fed, but many are untested, young men who have never faced the reality of combat. No one on either side truly understands what is about to happen. At first light, Union General Joseph Hooker orders his I Corps, 8,600 men, to advance through the northern cornfield toward Confederate lines held by Stonewall Jackson's divisions. The corn stands over 6 feet high, so dense that men can barely see a few yards ahead, perfect cover for an ambush. Jackson's veterans are waiting. The opening volleys slice through the stalks like a scythe, cutting down Union soldiers who never even glimpse their attackers. Men fall in rows, struck by invisible death. Survivors push forward, firing blindly into the smoke-choked air as musket fire and morning mist blend into a literal fog of war. For the next 3 hours, the cornfield becomes a living nightmare, a patch of hell that changes hands 15 times. Again and again, one side surges forward, only to be thrown back by savage counterattacks. Artillery from both armies rips through the field, turning men and stocks alike into pulp. One Confederate officer would later write that the corn was cut down as cleanly as if harvested by farmers, except the harvest was of flesh and bone. Reinforcements arrive. General Joseph Mansfield's 12th Corps, 7,200 fresh troops. But Mansfield himself is struck down within minutes, mortally wounded while trying to stop what he believes is friendly fire, only to realize too late that the men shooting are Confederates. By 9 a.m., the cornfield is unrecognizable, flattened and drenched in blood. Over 8,000 men lie dead or wounded, Union blue and Confederate gray intermingled in death. The survivors are out of ammunition, shattered in body and spirit. The Union has failed to break through. Lee's left flank holds, barely sustained only by desperate reinforcements rushed from other parts of his line. While the northern and central fields are soaked in blood, the southern sector has been eerily quiet. Here, Union General Ambrose Burnside faces a single stone bridge over Antietam Creek, defended by just 400 Georgian riflemen under General Robert E, positioned on the high ground above. Burnside commands 12,500 men, yet he launches frontal assault after frontal assault straight at the bridge, each one shredded by precise Confederate fire. For 3 hours, his men died trying to cross a choke point that could have been bypassed easily. Antietam Creek is shallow in several places, but Burnside ignores his officers' pleas to wade across. He's fixated on the bridge, obsessed. Finally, around 1 p.m., the 51st New York and 51st Pennsylvania rush the bridge in a desperate charge and take it through sheer courage and sheer numbers. But by then, Burnside has wasted 3 hours and hundreds of lives. It's 3 p.m. before he reorganizes and pushes toward Sharpsburg. If his advance succeeds, Lee's army will be trapped against the Potomac. Lee watches from a ridge, nearly out of troops. The end seems inevitable. Then on the horizon, salvation appears. A.P. Hill's Light Division, 3,000 men, arrives after a 17-mile forced march from Harper's Ferry. Still wearing captured Union blue uniforms, they smash into Burnside's exposed flank at the last possible moment. The attack is ferocious. Confused by the uniforms, Union soldiers hesitate, just long enough for Hill's men to drive them back. By nightfall, Burnside's troops are retreating to the very bridge they bled to take. Darkness falls over Antietam. The air is filled only with the moans of the wounded, men crying for water, for their mothers, or for death to end their pain. Lee's army has lost over 10,000 men, a quarter of its strength. McClellan's losses exceed 12,000, though his larger army can absorb the blow. In all, 23,000 Americans lie dead, wounded, or missing, more than the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, and the Mexican-American War combined. It remains the bloodiest single day in American military history. Lee should retreat. Logic demands it. His men are shattered, low on ammunition, and trapped against the Potomac. Yet Lee holds his ground for another day, defiant and unbroken. McClellan, despite having 20,000 untouched troops, refuses to attack, convinced he's outnumbered. When Lee finally withdraws on the night of September 18th, his Maryland campaign has failed. The Confederacy survives, but its myth of invincibility dies on that field. Strategically, Antietam is a Union victory, one that changes everything. Lee's invasion is halted. Britain and France, once on the verge of recognizing the Confederacy, now back away. And most importantly, President Lincoln has the victory he needs. 2 days after the battle, photographers Alexander Gardiner and his team from Matthew Brady's studio arrive. Their images, stark, unfiltered views of bloated corpses and shattered landscapes, shock the nation. Americans for the first time confront the true face of war. The New York Times writes that Brady has brought the bodies and laid them on our doorsteps. The illusion of romantic war dies at Antietam. The age of industrial killing has begun. For those who survived, the scars never fade. They will wake screaming for decades, haunted by the cornfields soaked in blood, by the cries that never stopped echoing in the night. The Civil War will grind on for 2.5 more years, bringing greater totals of dead, but never again such concentrated horror in a single day. September 17, 1862, Antietam.
a creek running red, a cornfield harvested by lead, a sunken road turned into a grave. From its carnage rose freedom, and a nation forever changed. Thanks for watching.